Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Want to first of all get straight to the boring business aspect of things and read out a memo that was sent out office wide, straight from the janitorial staff. So these are always fun. Let's see. Memo from the janitorial staff. Please do not use the bathroom on the 13th floor until we are able to determine the depth of the sinkhole that has appeared sometime last week. Caution is advised. Which, does our building even have a 13th floor? I thought we specifically went out of our way not to have a 13th floor. I don't know. I'm not an architect. I'm joined again by Jonathan. Say hello, Jonathan.
Hi, I don't know how you keep on finding me and also why you keep on reading these memos. We're the only two here, and honestly, if we're being honest, most of those memos are just for company policy.
You are absolutely correct. And the reason why I am wandering about this building is because I am trying to find. Listen, I'm trying to find an exit. Okay, don't tell anyone. I'm trying to find an exit door
Yeah,
anywhere. Okay, just anyway. So what are you doing in what is this place exactly?
Well, you say about like trying to find a place. Honestly, this whole place is a maze. It's like a shifting corridors of all kinds of stuff. Uh, I I don't know if I've kind of figured it out or anything, but I was able to find an exit. Most likely, it's gone by now because of the ever-changing status of this doggone building. But I recently went out because I was like, oh, I actually have stuff to make lunch at home, and I made some tacos and had that for lunch. Came back here. Um, Now we're in the mailroom, and honestly, I don't know how on earth you found me. Like I was just finishing up my dessert and everything, and you're like, "Hey, let's pull up and do an interview now," as if to say, like, my time doesn't matter. And I'm like, "Okay, sure, we'll deal with that." Surprisingly, I think might have perfect padding with how many letters there are. Is probably the reason why you have so many of these memos because most of them haven't been set out.
That's honestly possible. I actually took a shoot, like a mail shoot, to get here. I didn't know this was the mail room. I've never been to the mail room. So this is it, huh? This is the mail room.
I mean, if you take a mail shoot, you're gonna end up in a mail room.
Well, I
Like,
I thought it was a I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a shiny metal slide.
it, most times when you find like a shiny metal slide within a building, it's not to be an adult playground, which is unfortunate. But uh, I mean, unless you're at Meow Wolf's Omega Mart, then nothing is supposed to be an adult playground, really.
That's fair. And to be honest, you're absolutely correct. This mail room is not fun, really, at all. Like, why is there still mail coming through these chutes? Who's even reading this stuff?
I mean, for one part, you.
That's true.
Second
That's
off,
fair.
I'm concerned that we might not have somebody to help deliver this mail. But there's like some kind of board here with like conspiracy board. I don't want to read into it too much because the usual pins and strings leading to other documents and such. And I'm just like, this is probably why the mail guy left because there's something up with this with the mail that's being delivered here. But that's besides the point.
That's
Um,
true. That's true.
at least it's not a cramped office space. But I see we still only have one computer to use.
Yeah, they have these terminals set up all across the building, but yeah. Well, I wanted to ask a question and tee it up with a fun little factoid that I came across. I found out
Okay.
about this place. I don't know if you've ever been on YouTube or just online, various places, and you come across like a list of abandoned places. And maybe it's just me, but I am always so entranced by photos of places that are abandoned because my brain immediately doesn't go into uh, it being scary. I find it infinitely fascinating. Like photos of abandoned places. And I found one place that, just based off rip, off of the description, I would love to see this place because I think it's still there.
Before you go into that, but yeah, I have the same kind of reaction of just a quiet feeling of being mystified. Just you obviously go if you it's the best parts are when you find videos of people who do this and just go into abandoned places and record their findings.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
always some of the fun stuff to watch. Um, but like it's equal parts being mystified and just kind of you almost get into a silence of sorts, like a respect for the place itself, as if
Hmm.
it's living, honestly.
Hmm.
And and just kind of try coming to terms of understanding of why people were flocking to this place years ago and why it's eventually became abandoned. And so so when you go through videos, you do there are some people that definitely talk about the place and its history and such, which is always very nice. But it's usually in a hushed, quiet tone, as if someone is there, but no one is. And I think that's a general respect that I definitely enjoy when being able to look at abandoned places and such.
Do you think it has something to do with, and this is just me theorizing, just spitballing here, but when there's no people, like if you went to a high rise skyscraper and there was nobody there, no sign of life, like except for like birds outside, like nothing, there's no people. Do you think you'd almost interact with it kind of the way you were talking, like with nature, where since there's no people around, your brain is fully focused on your surroundings and just taking in the immensity of it all and how things are designed and put together? And like, I don't know, there's something cool about that on top of what you were mentioning that I really like, that kind of what you were talking about, that respect, is when a place is abandoned and then nature sort of subsumes it, right? Sort of
Mhm.
reclaims it. So you'll see pictures of these amusement parks that have been sitting for 60 years and nature has just entirely reclaimed it. So there's trees and plants and animals all living in the ruins of what used to be an amusement park. I find that very fascinating. This place in specific is sounds amazing and I'd love to go there. It's called Dinosaur World and it's in
Oh,
Arkansas, and
oh boy.
earlier known as John Agar's Land of Kong and Farwell's Dinosaur Park, was a tourist attraction in Beaver, Arkansas. 65 acres, which is massive, and it contained 100 life-size sculptures of dinosaurs, cavemen, and other prehistoric creatures, which is insane. So it closed in 2005, but to my knowledge, based on what I see here, the stuff hasn't been reclaimed by anyone, so I don't think anybody owns the property. So you could just go hiking there.
Yeah, I quickly looked it up on the terminal here, and I'm like, I don't know what these designers were on when making these dinosaurs, but I don't, but I am equal parts do and don't want whatever they're having.
Yeah, some of the dinosaur designs, based on the few images that I'm looking at, didn't necessarily scream realism to me.
Back to the point of your question about the skyscraper. If it would, first of all, I am terrified of heights, so I don't really want to be on top of a skyscraper.
That's fair. That's
Something
fair.
like, if it's something like the Paris Tower, where you get into a portion and then it's of windows and you can just look out over everything, like I'm kind of on that. If it's just apparently been built and nobody has and then everything vanished and everything is still clean and fine, I don't think it really is all that much interesting, because it seems like a newer structure, nobody's really been
Gotcha.
to it. I think that respect comes with age, with like either nature reclaiming it or it's just been around forever and nobody has really been around in it in a very long time.
Kind of spinning off of that, if there was I have something in mind. If there was one place that you would like to have nobody in just for a day so that you and like a small group of friends could just have the run of the place. I know my number one probably ever since I was 10 is Kosai. If you could hook it up so that way literally no one else was there and the entire building was just silent and you could go in there with a group of friends and just run around Kosai and no one was there, I still think that would be so freaking cool. Do you have something like that you've ever thought, if this place, if I just had it to myself with like me and a group of friends, what would that place be for you?
You
There are so
that's
many
a
places.
really
It's a big question, I
yeah. There's
know.
so many places. Like my mind is spinning on it because like there's just so many different places you could go where it would be 1,000 times better if there was just no one there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like human contact is horrible or anything, but like when you have like thousands of millions of people just constantly causing noise and clutter within the environment at all times, eventually you're just like I would rather be alone alone in my room rather than have to deal with all of this crazy crap that's going on.
Right. It's like
It just
sensory
fills the
overload.
mind, and it's yes, a sensory overload, exactly. I think part of that fear and respect, for, like, abandoned places kinda comes out of, I guess, a cultural idea and a subgenre of horror that I don't think has been really popularized, if I am saying it correctly. Um Specifically, specifically something of like a haunted house.
Hmm.
Not so, and when I say haunted house, I have to elaborate here. This house is not haunted by anything in particular, like a ghost, or there was or there was a murder that happened there, or anything. It's just a house or building of residence that just hates people. Like
Hmm.
you go in and you go in and you feel at complete unease, almost as if the building is alive in some sort.
The one time that I had that feeling was going into Ford's theater where Lincoln was assassinated. Down into the basement, they have John Wilkes Booth's pistol in a glass case that he
Mm.
used, and I have never been more like physically disturbed by another physical object just being near it. Like it was very strange. It was a weird experience because you're standing next to it and it's on a pedestal in a glass case and there's a plaque and everything. But I'm looking at it and I'm just like, ugh. I just feel the evil seeping off of it. I'm like, I don't want to stand next to this thing.
Yeah, and I think for this specific idea of a haunted house, it's less you know what happened in a building, or it okay, let me put it this way. It's less knowing the history of the gun and what it did, and all the terrible things that transpired from it, and more like you just walk into a room and there is a gun there, and for whatever reason you don't know why, it just physically disturbs you that that specific gun is in there. Just being around this specific object for whatever reason, it almost feels like it somewhat has a mind of its own, and it hates anything or anybody. It's less, oh, something horrible happened here, or it is haunted by something or
It just
someone.
feels oppressive.
Yes, it is an oppressive house that hates humanity, and it almost feels like you're walking into the maw of a giant organism, even though it isn't alive, technically so.
So you talked about like an interesting like sort of untouched subgenre of horror being that of just like there's no jump scare, there's no actual physical menace chasing you through a building. We've all been in buildings like alone at night and in sometimes that oppressive feeling just sort of happens. Walking from one room to the next and turning a light switch off and walking back can be terrifying enough.
I do want to say if anybody is more interested in specifically the haunted house subgenre, which it definitely has been published about, and definitely has even games and stories about it. It's just less popularized than usual horror tropes and less in the public consciousness as it is. But if you are interested in that, I have to recommend a video documentary by Jacob Geller named "Control Anatomy and the Legacy of the Haunted House," which is how I found out about this, and it's practically fantastic. I'd
Hmm.
also have to recommend his other content as well.
But on that topic of like subgenres, and I guess this isn't really a subgenre anymore, it's kind of exploded over the last year. What are your thoughts on analog horror?
I find it very interesting. I am not one to get into horror because it's always my nerves just get jangled and put to a fever pitch whenever I'm dealing with like horror stuff, whether it
I
be like from anticipation or just the sudden scare or spook of something.
I am baffled by people who like seek that out. Like, good for you if that makes you happy, brings you joy, or like you enjoy it. I don't get it, man. To me, it's like
It's
eating.
thrill seeking.
It's like yeah. It's like eating super hot foods that you know are going to give you extreme discomfort and pain going into it. It's like, why would you put yourself through that? Why would you sit down, pay money to go sit in a theater just to be scared for 2 hours? Like, I can't.
Yeah, they have like probably either stronger nerves of steel or just want an adrenaline rush, which
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Which there are worse things that human beings have done over the millennium that is so much worse as far as adrenaline seeking. So like, yeah, go for it. If that's the art form that makes you like, if you're happy with that, go for it. But that is not my cup of tea.
Yeah, like analog horror. I think I like it because it's in the comfort of my own home. I can watch it in broad daylight and just know that I am completely separated from the fiction while also somewhat getting immersed into it. Like putting dipping your feet into a cold pool on a summer day. Just
Right.
like, oh, that's a bit cold.
Oh,
Instead of just going like cannonball right into the pool and just coming out of it and just like, oh my gosh, I'm freezing.
yeah. I mean, there are just some very fascinating aspects to it, specifically analog horror, right? Because it's horror, but it is often framed around older technology and older history. And for some reason, and I don't know why this is, maybe it's just because we sort of confuse nostalgia with an immediate fondness for it, like Stranger Things, like they're going for a nostalgic vibe specifically, even though there's all these horrific things going on. They chose a specific era that would evoke certain emotions in people who either would remember that or aren't too far removed from it. But why do you think analog horror sort of exploded and became a thing? Do you think it's because it's such like a touchstone of people saying, "Oh, I remember VHS tapes. I remember older game systems and big chunky screens." Like, why do you think people responded so much to it?
I think it's a dual aspected thing for younger generations who have never had VHS or tape recorders and all of that stuff. It's all new to them. They get to see like a window into the past and they're completely unfamiliar with it, which
Hmm.
helps bring in might bring in an extra level of horror in that like this is some horrible evil or haunted thing that has been forgotten by ages past and only now is being brought back up.
Hmm.
So that can add to the fear of the unknown. But for other people, I think like ourselves who kind of grew up with that kind of stuff, it's it's also it while also being a sense of nostalgia and somewhat fondness for those good old days. I think it's also because we don't view our modern technology as quite as corruptible
Hmm.
in a sense as older technology
Interesting.
because obviously those older devices are going to be busted and somewhat busted and have less quality options and such, almost like a sense of a slight unreliability to them.
Interesting.
While like smartphones and all that such, you don't really have any like haunting stuff coming in and causing the screen to glitch out or anything on a modern device. But like tape recorders and VHS stuff, it's unreliable and weird enough with I think some level of recorded findings of this happening that it brings into that public consciousness that you could capture things that are unexplainable or horrifying on a VHS or tape recorder.
And going along with that, that's kind of an interesting point because also artistically, if you were designing something in the analog horror genre, it's kind of interesting how modern artists have to try to make their stuff look vintage because vintage technology, like you said, was so not necessarily, it was unreliable in some ways, but also the quality was so lacking that from an artistic standpoint, you don't have to worry about making certain things look hyper realistic if you're seeing it through the muddy lens of VHS, like crappy quality footage. It's more believable. If they were trying to make it look all pristine in HD, half that stuff would look like trash because if it's not masked by that vintage look, it would stand out as like, oh yeah, that's okay. That's not even scary. It looks really dumb. Yeah, that's a sad attempt. But when you take it old school and you put in the work to make it look vintage, you're able to. I feel like there's more wiggle room. You can get away with more that way, which kind of goes along with what you were saying.
It works a lot with certain arts in that you always have to take it one step forward because like what you're saying of like you make something and it looks like crap. If you were to just post it on its own, yeah, it would kind of be uninteresting or unappealing. But basically there's two ways you could have taken it from there onward. Is that it's a potential work in progress, and you can either continue to continue to improve upon it so that it would work for HD screens so that it look realistic enough and such, or you could instead take that and add visual effects to make it look older. It's all because both those processes are just part of the artistic process in of itself. Like if you want to make something look the way you want, it's going to take work either way.
Right. Yeah.
And and for something um and uh like if for example, uh, for example, like a backrooms kind of thing. If it was just the 3D models and you 3D models and you presented in a high definition form, that obviously wouldn't work. Obviously wouldn't work, but because you didn't really put in the efforts to like make to like gut to make the um make the room seem realistic, or you didn't really texture that wall or such, and you can still put work into it to improve it as long as you haven't published it as the final product. Meanwhile, if you want it to be on a VHS part, which is the whole reason of the backrooms in of itself, is that it's VHS analog horror. Then you're able to work with that and use that to your advantage because it's going to be a bit more pixelated and less quality, and it's going to have like static and filters over it to
Mm-hmm.
make it look like it is vintage, but but it then helps to make it seem more believable because you're less able to see the cracks of the original part without the surrounding environment with the filter on,
Yeah.
as opposed to having it without.
I think it's interesting thinking about like in the future if film students will be shown YouTube videos and say this was
Oh yeah.
groundbreaking in 2020. Like this
Oh,
was a massive
obviously.
breakthrough. That's just so strange to me, but like also, I mean it tracks logically. It's just sort of it's interesting to think about for sure.
Oh, obviously, yeah, because there's plenty of cartoons and such on YouTube that are really gaining traction and such. Like Has Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss.
Like that is the biggest thing to me is that somebody is making it their dang self and that it's being responded to well. Like that
They
means something so much to me because I feel like we need more of that because like when I was in
Yes.
high school, for example, like Alex Hirsch, like I read up all about his bio how he, was going to Cal Arts or whatever and he put up videos on YouTube and some studio like they found him, tracked him through that, and then eventually he got his gig with Disney, right? And I
Mhm.
think for a while that was like the play. It was like get your stuff out there to be noticed so then a bigger corporation can scoop you and your idea out of the muck and the mire, give you a bunch of money, give you a bunch of energy, and set you loose on your project. Thing is that over the last couple years, that idea has completely crumbled with all the series that have been prematurely canceled or creators who've stepped away from their projects, or you find out that the studios have completely like wrecked the original vision of the creator. And so that concept is growing, at least for me, I won't speak for everyone, is becoming increasingly less and less attractive as an option. It's like I would rather do something myself, have it look substandard, but at least I have full control over it and I can finish it rather than getting the full 4-star treatment only to have somebody turn it into something that's not what it was meant to be.
Yeah. And even then, like, and Has Been Hotel has been picked up by a studio. I think it's A24 if I'm correct. But A24 is one of those more freelancey studios that
Right.
doesn't
There's
get
a
as much
that yes,
recognition
that is
because
big difference between like that versus like a mega corporation that owns 20 companies.
the whole idea of going to Cal Arts and then becoming big is even starting to crumble because of animation of sites like Newgrounds where other animators showed up and such. Like more recently, you have people coming up with animations and such and putting them up on Newgrounds and YouTube and all these other places instead of going to college and then getting notoriety that way and gaining a following of fans who enjoy their animations for what they are, instead of having to do a bunch of stuff at some place like Cal Arts or something, and then getting recognized for coming up with a big project that gets sponsored by some big wigs in corporate. Speaking of animation, I am slightly curious. Slightly curious because I do watch at least a fair amount of the stuff, but I guess have there been any like anime titles you've ever been interested in or watched?
Okay, so I have a funny story. Um
Oh boy.
okay, so as you know, like growing up, I did not have many watching options. We did not have cable. So the only way that I could watch animated stuff on like a Saturday morning was through CW for Kids.
Mhm.
And CW for Kids had an interesting lineup to say the least. Some shows were really good and some shows were really bad. There was Biker Mice from Mars, there was
Mhm.
Viva Pinata, there was Go Go Riki, Kirby Right Back at You, Sonic X, Chaotic,
Oh
and
yeah,
Huntik. Huntik is what I have watched, and I think that is the only thing
Hunt.
that
Do you mean Huntix or Huntik?
Huntik, Huntik. So it's animated like
Okay, I
an
see.
anime, but I think the creator is from He has to be like
Yeah,
Italian.
this definitely seems like Western animation taking cues from Eastern animation.
Yes, and the voice acting is really good. They got some like big players. Like you would recognize probably most of the people in that show. And Professor Eggman is like one of the big main villains, but he is not funny at all.
Professor,
he is
Professor.
he is horrifying. Um what
Sorry. Did you mix up like Dr. Eggman from Sonic?
Sorry, I think he plays someone called the Professor in Huntik. Professor
Oh,
Eggman,
so
teaching at your local
Mike Pollock. You're
college.
talking about Mike Pollock. Okay.
Yes, he plays a villain in the
I was
show.
about to say what the okay. I was about to say like first of all, like how did Dr. Eggman become a professor
He
with his
teaches at
constant ruses?
he teaches at the local Sonic college. He teaches chili dogology.
Maybe Mr. Tinker does, but I certainly not Dr. Eggman.
Dr. Eggman.
And second of all, I was like, how brazen is this show to be like, oh, we have a character called Professor
Professor.
Eggman.
Yeah, I love Huntik. It's so serious. They have Professor Eggman. No, you've opened this door. I gotta talk about Huntik. Huntik deserves more attention. It is a good show, and basically, it's centered around basically over the course of history. There's been two major forces, good and bad, and they've been called different things over eons. And essentially, they get a hold of these amulets or rings that contain titans in them. And once you are bonded to it, you can summon it. And it basically does whatever your mind tells it to do. But if it gets defeated, it takes a major drain on your energy to summon it. But then if it gets felled or killed, it returns back to the amulet or ring and you've lost a bunch of energy. So like there is cost associated with it, but they also can use spells. It is a wild show, but it also goes all over the world and goes to historical sites and basically is like, oh, this famous historical figure was was also a seeker, like one of the people who can use the things. And they have Titan characters that are based off of different countries' folklore, and it's so cool. It was so neat. It was an awesome show, and that's probably the closest thing anime. I mean, Chaotic. Some of the later seasons, some of the later seasons of Chaotic, switched animation style into like full blown goofy anime, like crazy expressions, like very anime towards the end of that show. But that's probably the closest. I have never watched like something in its original like language. I have a very limited experience of that stuff. Because I just did not. We've discussed before how we have to have a movie night and we need to watch like Spirited Away or something. I need to see that movie.
Yeah, like I definitely don't. I'm definitely not gonna knock you for like liking Huntik, but I'm like somewhat on the edge because on the one hand, it seems like an interesting premise and some good ideas in there, but on the other hand, it's 4Kids, and 4Kids is like reviled as like the worst dubbing studio for anything in terms of anime.
I thought the dubbing in Huntik I always thought was good because, but I could be rose-colored glasses here, but until I was older, I didn't realize that it had been dubbed into a different language. I just thought that those voice actors
it wasn't dubbed into a English language. Maybe
I have no idea.
But like I don't trust 4Kids with much stuff, even though they've made a lot of nostalgic stuff that I definitely enjoyed as a kid. I am able to look at it critically and go, 4Kids, what were you on?
You could have just left it at what were you and leave it at that. What
were you? Honestly,
what were you?
I can answer that question myself of what were you, but honestly, even then, I will still ask myself, what were you?
What were you?
I actually did get a Ghibli film from the library.
Oh yeah.
For us to watch. I did grab My Neighbor Totoro. So.
Oh, that's another one I've heard about.
If at some points later on when we're not in the building somehow, and we get some free time, I would be more than happy to watch it with you.
There's an ancient
But
overhead projector in the conference room.
yeah, that might work. I'd like to also be able to just kind of interest you in possibly an anime series as well instead, if that's okay.
I'm listening.
Yeah,
I'm listening. I'm always down for suggestions.
yeah. So obviously, I talked about every '90s fantastic obsession and love child Pokemon last time I was on.
Of course.
And I swear this was not. This is not because I was. This is not to continue on to that.
It's
Uh,
fine.
uh,
It's all good.
but I but like I have like a whole table of of micro obsessions and properties that I really enjoy and get involved in. But every now and then I have to like get it put it on the back burner and switch it out with something else. And currently, what's on the front burner is the opposing side of every playground argument ever with Pokemon, Digimon.
Okay, all right. You're bringing Digimon back. I feel like you used to be way into Digimon, like when we were probably like 12, maybe earlier. You
Was I
definitely
into
showed
Digimon when
me.
I was 12?
You definitely showed me either part of a show or part of a movie
Hmm.
where there was like a weird little
Hmm.
bunny one that was just like a ball with ears.
Okay. I think I have an idea of what Digimon you're talking about, which might be Gargamon. Do you remember this? Do you remember this specific bunny having evolving slash digivolving into a bigger bunny with like Gatling gun arms?
I don't
Sorry,
think
hands.
I don't think we made it that far. What was the name of it?
I don't remember what movie you're talking about or what show I possibly showed you for Digimon and all that such. But when you
Which
say
character was it?
but when you say like a bunny like creature, my mind immediately goes to Terriermon and his champion level Digivolution or adult level Digivolution for if we're going by Japanese terms, Gargamon. Hold on, let me find a real quick image of Terriermon and Gargamon for you.
I see. I'm looking at. Yeah, I'm seeing Gargamon and I'm seeing Terriermon. It could have been Terriermon, but for some reason in my memory it was just the head looking up at like the girl or something that was in her
Oh wait,
house.
no. Wait, I think I know
I definitely
what.
feel like it went to the bathroom on the floor, and that was the whole gag.
Okay. I absolutely know. I absolutely know what we're talking about now. I know. I
It's
know it. I know
burned
it.
in
Hold
my
on.
memory. That's all I remember about
Uh,
it.
uh, Koromon. Look up Koromon. Koromon.
Yep,
There you go. Koromon.
that's the
I
one.
ab. Yes, I absolutely did show you that movie. Okay, so what we're talking about here is the hated and also beloved English dubbed Digimon the movie. Oh, oh, I uh so fun fact, Max, I just watched this movie with
Are you
Merica the other
serious?
day. Yes, yes. Um and the reason for it is because Digimon the movie is both a pretty great movie, and it's also just an absolute hack job of a localization. Um, so to explain what was going on back in the day, the Pokemon movies had just recently come out, and obviously they were big hits in the theater. So Fox, who was in charge of English localization of the Digimon series, wanted to replicate that formula, and and so they looked around for whatever Digimon material they could use, and by that point there was 3 OVAs of Digimon that had come out beforehand, and OVAs are like OVAs in anime terms are like short movies, so to say, or specials. Like they're not movie length, but they're also not episode length.
They're
So
somewhere
they're
in
in the
between.
middle.
Yeah.
So they had so at that point there was 3 OVAs. So Fox just looked at these three OVAs they had that were already produced and just gave them over to the English localization team. It was like, here, take this and make a movie out of all 3 of them that by most accounts did not have anything to do with each other. Like and so hold on, let me find out which OVAs these were. So the first is Digimon. So first is like Digimon Adventure, which is not which I'm not talking about the anime series, but rather the specific OVA Digimon Adventure. Um, then there's Digimon Adventure Our War Game, which is like the best part of Digimon the movie, and is also just a fantastic OVA/film in its own right. And then there's the worst part of the Digimon movie, which is Digimon Hurricane Touchdown.
It's a great
And
title.
and I and honestly, looking at it through the lens of having to try and connect all 3 of these as one interconnected story/narrative, the localization team did pretty well with what they had, which was not a lot. And honestly, a lot of people, there's a good amount of people who are Digimon fans who are like, "Oh, the Digimon the movie absolutely sucks. It's the it's the worst." But I'm one of those few people, or maybe less known people. I don't know if it's like a minority or just the 50 to the other 50 who hates the movie. He hate the English dub movie that just really chives with it. Um. Like. Uh. Like I had. Like I've got a movie scale of rating for movies that is I adopted/stole from Jello Apocalypse. Like negatives denotes ironic enjoyment, like how much you can riff on a bad movie,
Right.
and the positives are like unironic enjoyment. And I have to say, Digimon the movie is both a 7 and a -7. It's fantastic.
It breaks the scales.
There are genuine points where there are genuine points in the movie where like me and Marika were just watching the movie normally, not speaking, and actually enjoying it for what it had. And then and then like I think during a specific part in the third part of the movie, which is technically Digimon Hurricane Touchdown, where we literally stopped the movie and we're just absolutely riffing on the ridiculousness of the edits that had gone into this.
That's so awesome.
And the best part about it is like the localization of this movie is timelessly of its time. It is so early 2000s, it hurts, and I love it. Like some of the soundtrack is replaced with like pop music from the 2000s/ska music.
Oh, dude.
All Star is in that movie.
What?
Yes,
What?
there's a horribly there's a kind of horribly inserted a moment where it is just one of the Digimon is just trying to dance and All Star is playing in the background, and it's so bad and it's so good.
So I don't know if you heard about this, but Owl City, after having released their last album in 2018, just came out with a new song a couple weeks ago, and it's an all-star Smash Mouth remix mashup. And I don't care
Perfect.
what anyone says. I don't care. I'm just glad Owl City's making music again. The fact that that happened in my lifetime The fact that there is now an Owl City remix of All Star somehow makes me complete in ways I didn't know I was incomplete.
Yes, and honestly, I have to show you this movie now that I've been able to gush about it
All right,
because
we'll
there's
have to
just
add that to the list then.
yes, and if you actually want good Digimon content, I am half wanting to show you either Digimon Tamers, which is like the best one of the best Digimon series, and the most recent Digimon series that seems to be rivaling Tamers in its quality, Digimon Ghost Game.
Okay.
Um, uh, Ghost Game is certainly turning out to be a fantastic series. And Tamers is just a pretty solid storyline and a fantastic series in its own right. Um, but the reason I got like so hyper fixated on Digimon in the first place was like, I'm more of somebody who stays indoors, plays video games, and does all that other stuff. So I don't get outdoor and get physical much. And I'm like, I should probably get some exercise in me just to stay at least a little bit fit, and
Right.
also to improve my mood a little bit.
Oh yeah, I take walks all
And
the time, and it does wonders for my mental health.
yeah,
Walks.
and I guess this is a question. Just as a question, what do you think the origin of the Digimon series was?
Gosh, if I had to guess, it probably has something to do with Tamagotchi type stuff, right?
You're actually correct. You're
Okay.
actually incredibly correct. Digimon was the boy version of Tamagotchi. And then the anime was made, and then everything exploded from there.
That's awesome.
Um and for the longest time they've released like different variants of virtual pets and such that are Digimon related. And they never really upgraded, so to say, to a better format. It was always like the blocky 4x4 pixelated version of Digimon on a LCD screen with no color and like 3 buttons to its name that can't be left out in the rain. Um, and most recently, or rather, like a year ago, they released a new Digimon V-Pet, but this one is much different, and frankly, I'd say it's an improvement on the on the V-Pet formula. It is called the Digimon Vital Bracelet, and it is a Fitbit Lite kind of digivice that acts as a bracelet. It tracks your steps and it tracks your heart rate. It's not the best, but it's at least something and you get to raise and train Digimon um, uh, as you exercise and such.
That's such a fun idea.
And I think the best part about it is that with the old V pets, if you wanted a new Digimon line or you wanted a new Digimon, you'd have to get a whole other di- a whole other Digimon virtual pet console. So you'd have like two different things and such, two different like consoles if we were to go by like video games logic, normal video game logic, instead of like getting a new game for it. Um, it's like having Uno on the Xbox, and then if you wanted to get Uno Deluxe, you'd have to buy a whole nother Xbox.
Right. Yeah.
But with this one, um, they have upgraded so that the screen is now it is now a backlit LCD screen, so you don't need like a light to view it like you did in the old years of Game Boy or Game Boy Color. The sprites have color and they are more defined. I'd say maybe 64 bits kind of sprite resolution or such. I'm not sure in terms of in terms of sprites and such, but instead of having to get a whole new vital bracelet and such, you can you instead buy these things called dim cards, which is basically their fancy differentiation of a SIM card, and
Okay.
each dim card has a new line of it has a new Digimon slash Digivolution line to go through, and you just buy that for about and like most retail dim cards are like $10 or
Oh,
so,
wow.
and then you just plug it into the vital bracelet, and you've got a new Digimon to raise and train.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it connects, and in order to store old Digimon that you've trained and you have sentimental value over, like I do, um, there is an app. There's an app for the vital bracelet where you're able to use NFC technology to transfer your Digimon from the vital bracelet back over to the app, and then put them in storage or use them for various battles or events and such that pop up.
That's really, really cool.
And I have been enjoying the ever living hell out of it.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, I still need to get a phone with NFC so I can transfer my Digimon over to the app, but until then, I am content with the two Mega level Digimon that are currently in my bracelet and am currently awaiting an order for 3 new dim cards that I am getting.
See, this is why you have to watch Huntik. You've basically got the premise down
Oh
already.
my
You've got a
gosh.
mythical creature, magic being, not magic. I
But it
understand how.
doesn't
I know
have
it's
the
digital.
same
It's
brand
it's in the
recognition.
it's in the bracelet. It's in
I
something you
want
put
to.
on your body. You're practically living the show. You got to watch Huntik.
Am I able to take Agumon and smack him against this Machine Dramon? I don't think so.
You can if you believe hard enough.
But then it's gonna be an off-brand Agumon, and that's not what I want. It's like asking for for McDonald's, and your mom says we have McDonald's at home, and you get a much inferior product. But anyways, I assume we have to wrap up.
Yeah, I think that's time. I'm pretty sure a rabbit just came down one of the chutes in the back, which I think that means it's time for us to go.
Yeah, that might be a good telltale sign to go.
All right, conference room. Let's go. You bring the
All
popcorn.
right.